Many clients, vendors, and associations have been reaching out to our agents asking what the effects of the coronavirus are having on the real estate market, as well as what that means for their situation specifically. We are doing webinars across the country and will continue to do so, but realizing the demand of this content, we wanted to get it into our clients' hands directly, as well as those who follow us on social media. Before I get into the content, though, I do want to say how honored we are to be in the healthcare community. It is so cool to see those of you on the front lines investing your time and tirelessly helping these patients. And even those of you who have been deemed non-essential, sending supplies and helping in any way that you can. It's never been more evident to us the weight of the healthcare industry on this country, and we are honored to help those who help others. And so we just want to say that we've been here for a long time and we will continue to be here for you. If you need anything for us as it pertains to your real estate or anything else, please feel free to reach out to us. So to start the presentation, I want to say kind of how we got here and what led us to this point. And so in the middle of March, the task force for this COVID-19 virus came out and said that they saw curves in other countries, and the curves were all pretty similar, and that we needed to flatten the curve to make sure that we don't overwhelm our hospital systems. And so they came out with this 15 days to slow the spread. It started as an idea with social distancing, making sure that you're not shaking people's hands, that you're not touching surfaces where other people have touched, and even getting too close, staying a certain distance away from people, as it's a respiratory virus and can be spread through the air. And so it started as an idea. It started as let's try this thing, but many states, especially those that are hotspots for the virus, have started making it a mandate and even making it punishable by misdemeanor offenses. And so it's obviously affecting the market in many different ways, but it's even affecting healthcare offices. So many healthcare offices made it through 2009 and some of these other viruses without much effect because people still have toothaches and they need those fixed, and people still have sick pets and they need to take them into their veterinarian, or need shoulder surgery and need to go to the orthopedic surgeon. And so the effects hadn't necessarily been the same in other situations as they currently are today. But many states have deemed a lot of healthcare offices as non-essential, and that the businesses had to temporarily close their offices. And so a lot of that ban included procedures that a lot of our clients did on a daily basis. And so it has slowed the income and made it really hard to produce in an environment where your procedures are deemed non-essential. Some offices have kept their doors open. Some have said, hey, come in when you can. If you need emergency care, we are here for you. But some others have said, we are going to shut our doors and we will open up. If you need an emergency procedure, let us know and we can come to the office. But it is definitely, in fact, impacting the income on a lot of our practices, which creates several concerns, obviously, for our offices. One is payroll. Do I need to furlough my employees? Do I need to lay them off? What do I need to be doing? Do I keep paying them? Another one is obviously supplies. There are many questions as it pertains to supplies because your office doors are going to open again. And what it means is these last 2 or 3, however many weeks of patients that you haven't seen, you have to reschedule those appointments, and you already had appointments on the books. And so what does that mean for supplies? Again, some of you guys are helping get supplies in the hands of those who are on the front lines of this thing. And so you giving those supplies to those people obviously is going to affect your business when it opens back up. And so how do I handle that? What about leases and mortgages? This is a question that we get most often, but it's definitely something that needs to be considered. And then how about debt service? What do I do with the current debt that I have, whether it's a line of credit or a mortgage or a practice loan? What do I do with all of those? And the truth is, a lot of these things can't easily be modified. A lot of these things are there, and you're either paying them or you're not. And what happens when you don't pay your mortgage, or what happens when you don't pay your employees? And so it's led to a lot of questions that, again, these vendors and associations are getting every day from dentists and medical professionals and physical therapists, everybody else saying, what do I need to be doing with all of these expenses? I do want to hit on one thing though, and that is when we are sitting at home and we have the news on, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by bad information. And I know there's a lot of bad out there. There are deaths coming by the hundreds in a lot of cases, and this virus is spreading. But what you look for, you will find. So if you're looking for those things, you're going to find those things. But the truth is, as it pertains to business, there's not been a better time for you as a small business owner to look into your business expenses. And with all of that said, the government is doing some things that are changing how it is going to affect you. So this doesn't necessarily have to be a terrible situation. So what we're looking for, you will find, and I would suggest to be looking for the things that are good and that can affect you. You get to spend more time with your family, even in terms of those of us staying home. Hopefully there are less deaths and sickness from the flu or from accidents that would have otherwise occurred. And so there are good things happening. And I would just suggest to be careful what you're looking for. What is the filter that all of this news is going through? I'll give you an example. There's a thing called confirmation bias, and our brains are kind of wired to confirm what we already believe. And so I'm going to give you an analogy that definitely has holes in it. This is not an apples to apples comparison, but as it pertains to the confirmation bias, I think it is a pretty good analogy. And also, it's going to make you smile because we've just got a puppy and she is adorable. So this is Penny. She is a 3-pound miniature Aussie, and she is the sweetest dog in the world. We just got her on Saturday. And when I walked in the door with her, my kids were so excited. They were petting her. But they'd never had a puppy before. And so they didn't know. It was kind of unexpected what was going to happen. And so this tiny dog, again, 3 pounds, as soon as I put her 4 tiny little paws on the ground, she ran at them because she was excited to see them. And they spread like mice. They were jumping on counters and sofas and chairs to make sure that this tiny little dog couldn't hurt them, because in their mind it was an unexpected thing and they weren't sure what was going to happen. So they defaulted to fear of, this dog might be trying to hurt me. So now everything that this dog does is running through that filter. And so when they are sitting on the couch and they get hungry, they see the dog over there and they think, maybe I can make it to the kitchen if I run fast. And so they jump off the couch and run, which is obviously a commotion that the dog, maybe she thinks they're playing, and so she chases them. And in their minds, they think, oh my goodness, this dog is trying to hurt me. It's confirmed she's running at me. Or the other day, my 2-year-old walked around the corner and Penny was sleeping. And just seeing the dog created this fear, and she started crying, to which the dog, who is nurturing, ran to her to see what was wrong. And it scared her because she wasn't sure what this dog was trying to do. So what we're trying to teach our kids to do is to, let's get down, let's assess the situation, keep your face down, because as soon as you pull back, she's going to keep coming at you, and it's just going to create this anxiety. And so if you get down and hold her back and pet her, you're going to realize that there is benefit to her, that she might nip you here and there, but she's definitely not trying to hurt you. And as soon as she feels your skin, she releases, and they're starting to get it. But the truth is, it's all based on the filter of which you're seeing her actions through. So as it pertains to the coronavirus, there is a lot of bad. Obviously, the coronavirus is not a puppy. It's not the coronavirus is a sickness, and there is bad that is surrounding it. But what are you looking for with the news when it's coming in? Are you seeing some of the stimulus and how it can affect your business? Because right now, when you're not able to produce and when you don't have income coming in the door, one of the best things you can be doing is focusing on your business and seeing all of these benefits that are going to help you not only get through this, but potentially be in a better situation in the long run. But if we're making decisions out of fear, if we're concerned that we're not going to be here, we might lay employees off, or we might not pay rent. And that is actually affecting some of the benefits that could be coming that could help us get through this in some situations. There's not a more evident story of this than the beginning of CARR. We're a real estate company. We started in 2009. That was when the real estate bubble popped, and thousands of people were running out of the industry. Businesses that have been around for years were shutting their doors. But our CEO saw this as an opportunity, and he said, people still need help. And I am going to start a business in 2009 when everybody else is closing their doors. But his mindset was one of, I'm not going to participate in the recession. And he has said that before, and it's very counterintuitive, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But it was his belief that there are going to be good things, that I am going to get through not only this situation, but I'm going to come out stronger because of this situation. And now across the country, we have 100+ agents. We're in 30 some markets, and we've grown rapidly because somebody took and didn't see the situation for what everybody else saw it for, and saw some of the benefits and how his business could grow from it. Obviously, there were terrible economic things happening to others, but just because bad things are happening elsewhere doesn't mean that we're going to catch the coronavirus, or that any of our loved ones will, or that this situation is going to affect us. But there are a lot of things, it is affecting us one way or another. But with some of the stimulus money coming in, there is a lot of good things that I would try to be focusing on if I were you, because you're going to live a happier life. You're going to spend more time with your family, with the TV off, things of that nature. It's important to know what's happening, but please don't sit in front of the TV for hours, because it can be depressing. I can tell you, I've done it many days, and the days where I turn it off and listen to some of it here and there, I'm a lot more happy. So all of that to say, what is your filter? How are you hearing all of this news? If you don't get anything else, I hope we can get that from this. So what is the state of the real estate market? Real estate market, until very recently, even as recent as February, was at an all-time high. And so sellers and landlords and investors were loving the real estate market. But what that meant for you as a buyer or a tenant was that it was a tight market. And so you didn't have the benefit of it being a buyer's market. But there have been articles recently of saying now we're in a buyer's market. And so the market is shifting because there's this skepticism, because a lot of people are letting fear dictate their decisions and pulling back and not doing something, when now is actually a great time, if you're a buyer or a tenant, to push forward and to take advantage of the fact that it's no longer a seller's market. At the very least, it's evening out. In some cases, it actually is a buyer's market at this point. But it is now a buyer's market because there is concern of the buyers and tenants, and landlords are seeing a slowing down of rent payments. They're seeing some of their tenants closing their doors. Even some restaurants, some retail uses are not going to make it through this. Others are just having a tough time paying the rent at this point, and so they don't have as much income, and there's some concern on their part for, how am I going to get through this? So many deals have stalled. Many deals that were even going to be closing this month or next have even died, because people are no longer transacting because there is a skepticism or a concern. But again, this provides a great opportunity for buyers and tenants. I realize I'm not supposed to be touching my face, but I have an itch. And so my apologies to all of our healthcare providers. So what can I do as an owner? Let's say you own your real estate. The first thing you need to do is assess your current loan situation. Again, whether it's your mortgage or whether it's credit, lines of credit, or anything else, you want to be making sure that you're in the best position in that regard. Again, in reaction to a lot of this, the feds have done a number of things to bring back regulations and to increase people lending money. And so that provides a great opportunity for you as a healthcare provider to ensure that even beyond this situation, even beyond the next couple months, you're in the best position with your loans, because you can come out of this thing better with that. Many banks are also abating payments. We've heard of Wells Fargo and Bank of America and a lot of these bigger banks, PNC, saying, hey, we're going to be pushing some loans back if you call them and ask. And so call and ask. All they can do is tell you no. But a lot of banks these days are pushing back some of these payments and making it interest free for that period. Also ensure that your rates are not above market. Many of you took loans out 4 or 5 years ago, and if you have not refinanced them, it's a great time to be asking. But the most important thing is that you have a bank who understands your industry. If your bank does not understand healthcare or doesn't understand the success of you as a healthcare provider, banks are sometimes tightening up in certain situations. But those that understand healthcare are going full bore ahead. They have not changed how they're underwriting their loans, and they're very excited for healthcare loans and refinances and things of that nature. So the other thing you can do is to consider adjusting your amortization schedule. So if you were paying on a 15-year amortization on a loan that you did 2 or 3 years ago, you might be able to reach out to the bank and say, hey, would you guys mind if we pulled this back to a 20 or even a 25-year amortization? Because in that instance, it could affect your cash flow to the tune of hundreds or even thousands, depending on the size of your loan, of dollars per month. So those are a couple things you can do as an owner. But what about those of us who lease? The vast majority of our clients are leasing their space. And the truth is, every situation is different. And every situation needs a specific analysis from a professional. Knowing those dates are imperative. You want to make sure that you understand what the dates are within your lease. Not even just the expiration date, but some of the other dates that might be critical within leases. If you have 10 years left on a lease, if you have 7 years left on a lease, there's not much ability to renegotiate. You can ask for abatement, but they don't necessarily have to give that to you. If you are within 2 years of a lease, 18 months, 12 months, 6 months, now is a phenomenal time to be considering your options. In some situations, landlords will give rent abatement, but it's not always the best case scenario for you. We had a situation recently for a client who just signed a long-term lease. She was starting a practice, and she reached out to the landlord and said, "Hey, can I have some rent abatement?" And he gave her a couple options. One was to kick the rent back to the end of the lease. Another one was to pay it back within a year. And so understanding if you do need to do it, if it is a necessity, understanding what that implication is for the long run and will you end up paying more in the long run is imperative. You've got to know what is happening, how the landlord, because the landlord's not just going to not let you pay that amount of money. They still have mortgages to pay and they're trying to figure out the same thing. So it's important that you make sure that you understand the situation. And in some dire situations, you may want to contact an attorney to discuss your options. There's some language in certain leases, if your attorney negotiated it on the legal portion of the negotiation when you signed that lease, they might have put force majeure language in there. There's a lot of question back and forth. Some attorneys say it is applicable now, some attorneys say it isn't, but it might be worth looking into if you're in a dire situation. What I would caution you with though is they might come back and say that you don't have a case to make here. And in that instance, you just spent a couple $1,000s potentially on an attorney for a situation where you're not even going to be able to capitalize on that anyways. And so with everything happening, before I did anything, before I cut any payroll and before I cut any lease payments, I would consider what is happening in DC. As of the time of this video, the House has not yet passed this stimulus package, but it's looking like today that's going to happen. And so what you need to understand is, how does that affect your industry specifically? You're an optometrist. What does that mean for you? Do you have access to these funds? Because I have heard recently from the task force and from those on Capitol Hill that if you're paying your employees and if you are paying your rent still, those are the two things that I've heard. If you keep paying those things, sometimes those loans can be forgiven upon this situation passing. And so I can't confirm that or deny that, but if I were you, I would be leaning into that situation and looking as much as I could at what does this stimulus package mean for me? Do I have benefit from this? And if so, what do I need to do? What are the boxes that I need to check to make sure I do have that benefit? If not, then we can consider maybe we should look into some of these lease options. At the end of the day though, every lease has an end date. And so if your lease is within a certain period of time, you should be making sure that you are paying a fair market rate. Monitoring those dates and deadlines can save you or cost you tens to even hundreds of thousands of dollars. We have seen it in multiple scenarios recently and over the last 10 years, 12 years since CARR has been around. I'll give you one instance. We have a medical provider who had a 30,000 square foot lease. They were paying $18.50 per square foot and went around and asked the other tenants, is that what you're currently paying? And the other tenants said, yeah, that's what we're paying. And so they thought that was fair market. And they were about to sign that lease when they met one of our medical agents. And he said, hey, do you mind if I give it a shot and see if we can save you money? By the end of that negotiation, we saved the office $2.7 million over the next 10 years. The terms that the landlord was offering at $18.50 per square foot was a 10-year term. What we were able to negotiate after rent reduction, after free rent, after lower escalations, readjusting some things within a lease that a lot of people would have even missed, and $500,000 of tenant improvements, it was a $2.7 million savings. Now, the majority of you on this call do not have 30,000 square feet, but many of you have 3,000. So if you divide that number by 10, that's still a $270,000 savings. And that is money directly into your pocket. You don't have to see another patient or produce another dollar to save or net that amount of money. These are important negotiations and they oftentimes get overlooked. So one of the best things you can do is to make sure you have a good game plan. When that period comes up, asking the landlord for a rent reduction is not necessarily going to work. So you need to realize that it is tenant versus landlord. Every deal is either going to be landlord friendly, tenant friendly, or somewhere in between. It's not usually on one of those ends, but it's usually somewhere in between. So it usually falls on the landlord side because landlords know what they're doing And they also, this is the funniest thing to me, landlords do hundreds of transactions and they have somebody representing them in the vast majority of those situations. Whereas medical tenants, dental tenants, veterinary tenants oftentimes do not. They don't have somebody helping them through the transaction. So what that means is that deal is going to fall heavily on the landlord side. So it might be here somewhere in the middle. And if you can move it to the other side here, this difference might be $100,000. It might be $200,000. It might be $10,000. But again, that is money that's net to you and that you save without having to see another patient. So a number of the common approaches, I touched on one, asking other tenants what you're paying. Just because those other tenants are paying that does not mean that's what you should be paying. Another one is just approaching the landlord saying, hey, will you give me a rent reduction? Again, that's not a great approach because the landlord does not need to give you anything. And what you need to realize is that that landlord is not a bad person for wanting to capitalize on the real estate. So don't let yourself fall into that. I'll give you an example. If you had a house on the market for $400,000, but somebody was moving in from another state, they had a $2 million house, but they're moving to a market that's less expensive. And so they're willing to pay more for it because their best friend lives right next door, or it's the only house in that neighborhood. If somebody was willing to pay you $500,000 for the house, I promise you're not going to say no to that. It's the exact same thing with real estate. When a doctor goes to a landlord and says, hey, I want your space, that landlord has no incentive to give you a good deal because they know that you're going to take the deal no matter what. You want to be in that space. And so you've got to ensure that you have a solid game plan or that you have somebody helping you with a solid game plan. What is fair market? The truth is that's a very subjective question, or objective. I'm not an English major, but the truth is you don't really know because what you are paying in rent or what somebody else is paying in rent does not necessarily mean that's what you should be paying, because you as a healthcare provider are a prime tenant or a buyer for this real estate. And so just because somebody else paid a certain amount for it, just because a vape shop is paying that 2 blocks away doesn't mean that's fair market. There are many, many considerations into what is fair market. And the truth is fair market is based upon you as the tenant. So what would other landlords be willing to do to get you as the tenant into the space? You have to know the market. You have, even if you want to stay, you've got to know what other landlords would be willing to do to keep you. The other thing is, should you own real estate? A lot of times it makes sense. A lot of times it doesn't, but you should know all options. When your lease comes up for renewal, you should look at both purchase and lease options. The lease options, even if you want to stay, the lease options help give you leverage to ensure that you know what people are willing to do for you, and that we know how to approach the landlord to ensure that you're getting the best deal. Many landlords will get very competitive for a solid healthcare tenant. That's because a lot of their restaurants right now are closing their doors. They may not even open. A lot of retailers, same thing. But you as a healthcare tenant are going to make it through this. Many of you could have made it through even without this stimulus package. But because of the stimulus, many of you are going to come out on the better end of this thing because you are going to make it regardless. And so landlords see that and they're willing to get very competitive for a good lease like yours. There's never been a better time in history. There's never been a better time in recent history to explore your options. A couple common misconceptions about real estate agents. One is that hiring an agent is going to cost you money. Let me be clear on this. As a buyer or a tenant, you should not pay for your representation. Some agents will say, I'm going to charge a retainer, so a couple $100s a month to make sure that you're going to transact. You should not pay that fee. If they get paid in a transaction, it should be just like residential real estate from the seller, or in the commercial real estate perspective from the landlord. So you should not pay for that representation. Some of you though realize, okay, well, I don't have to pay it, but maybe I can cut that out of the deal. I know how real estate works. I'm just going to cut 3% off the deal and we'll get this deal done because I'm saving without having an agent. I can tell you very confidently that if you approach a landlord or a listing agent with that, they're going to be happy to cut 3% off the deal because they had 15 to 20% sometimes. In many situations, they had large majority of their deal, or a large portion of their deal, they were willing to give in concessions to get a good tenant. And so you're not even saving money by not having an agent. And the truth is, the landlord is going to turn around and pay their agent anyways. They have a negotiation on the front end of the deal before that listing agent can put their sign in their window. They have agreed on what that commission is going to be. If you, as a tenant, or a buyer bring somebody to the deal to help you, they're just going to split that fee with the listing agent. If you don't have somebody, they might cut that 3% off the deal, but they're still going to end up paying 6% to their agent because their agent has an agreement, a legal document on the front end of the deal, which gives them right to that commission. My attorney can help me with my renewal negotiation. A lot of clients believe that their attorney is the one to turn to for a renewal negotiation. And the truth is, real estate attorneys are imperative in every transaction, but there is a place for them. There is a legal negotiation. There are two transactions happening. One is the business points, the other is the legal, and they combined create that real estate transaction. So you've got to have somebody who understands the business points. Many real estate agents don't realize what market is in that area because it can change with a half a mile distance. Market is different depending on the location and depending on the tenant. And so you've got to have somebody help you with the business side too, which is the one that makes the most difference to you because it affects your bottom dollar. Attorneys are there to help make sure that there is language within your lease for times like this, or so they can't relocate you or things of that nature. So an attorney, although they do have a great place in the transaction, the business points should not be one of those things. A number of you have residential agents who help you with a transaction. Please don't do that. It would be akin to me having a toothache and I need a crown and I go see an orthopedic surgeon. Just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you know what you're doing when it pertains to certain procedures. And so it's the same thing with residential real estate agents. There are many things in a commercial transaction which a residential real estate agent does not often see. And so you've got to have somebody who understands commercial real estate. And then the last one is that all commercial real estate agents are the same. This is not true at all because many agents, the vast majority of agents, represent both sellers and buyers and both landlords and tenants. It's important that you have somebody who only represents you within the transaction for two reasons. Number one, you can ensure that you're seeing the full market. If they have even one property in that area, that means they are exempt from giving you an unbiased opinion on the market because they have a vested interest to getting you into that property. They might not, but if their property fits your need, they might show you that property first. And if they can work out terms that work for you, you might not even see the property next door that would have given you a better deal. If they have multiple properties that fit your need, even more so. We've heard of clients who said, I realized that every property that was being shown to me had their name in the window. I just didn't know what it meant. The other side is, even you are one deal to this client or to this agent. And so there might be a landlord that you're negotiating against who doesn't have an agent. And if that landlord has 10 properties, that agent has a vested interest to make sure they could go land those properties and feed their family for a year as opposed to your one transaction. And so there might be a hesitation or a thought in their mind to say, I want to try to earn this guy's business. And it could create a conflict. Maybe it might not show up, but there might be a conflict in their mind or in their heart of this is a great potential client for me. And so how do I make sure that he feels like I did a good job and I can earn his business? Not all commercial agents are the same. Find somebody who is a buyer tenant only agent for yourself. A couple of the takeaways. Make sure you engage a professional. There's no downside to having somebody represent you. It doesn't cost you money. It doesn't save you money to go at this alone. Yet 80% of healthcare professionals are doing this on their own. It's a tragedy and many of them are getting taken advantage of. Submit your lease to an expert to track those dates. If you get your lease in the hands of somebody who can help and who can understand those dates, it can again save you tens to even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ensure your agent does not have any conflicts of interest. If you have an agent, ask them if they represent landlords or sellers. If they say yes, you should heavily consider working with somebody who only represents your interests and only cares about your interests within a transaction. Make sure you have an agent who can provide you a solid game plan. Ask your agent what their game plan is to get you a good deal. If they say, I'm going to negotiate, that's not a good plan. Your agent should have a 5 to 7 step game plan to ensure that you're getting the best possible deal. And the most important thing is to keep a solid perspective through all of this. There's a lot of money that is being put into the economy to ensure that people like yourself are taken care of through all of this, and that you are taking care of your people through all of this and paying your bills through all of this. And so keep a solid a solid mindset through all of this so that you don't get bogged down, because it's so easy through all of this to hear all of this negative information and to not feel great about it, and to be concerned about your future when you as a healthcare provider have a very bright future ahead, especially with all of the help coming in. And I'll add one more thing, and to reiterate, make sure that you're understanding what these packages mean for you. It might not apply to some professions. It does apply to many, and probably most, but up to date, we're not sure yet. So lean into webinars, find other professionals who can help you through this, and make sure you understand what, not only if it applies to you, but what you need to be doing to ensure that you're not potentially even having to pay that money back. We would love to help you at CARR. We've got agents across the country. Even if we don't have an agent in your market yet, the fact that we're buyer tenant only and healthcare only, I am very confident that we can negotiate better deals, even than some agents in your area who might have a conflict of interest with sellers or with landlords. So if you have a lease, there should be a link on this video where you can click and insert that lease, and we can track those dates for you and reach out to you at the correct time when it is time to negotiate and to consider your options in the market.